All right, well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is John Newman. I'm a professor here at the law school, and it is my distinct and great honor to introduce Joseph T. Rannazzisi. I was given the almost impossible task of condensing his extensive experience down to a page. I've now attempted the even more impossible task of crossing most of that out, but please trust me that his experience is impressive and extensive. He has over 29 years of federal law enforcement experience with the Drug Enforcement Administration. While there with the DEA, he was the Deputy Assistant Administrator of the Office of Diversion. He's currently the President of Due Diligence Compliance, where he provides consulting and training services to state and a variety of other stakeholders. So, drawing on his training as both a pharmacist and an attorney, as well as his decades of experience in nearly every facet of federal drug enforcement and regulation, Mr. Rannazzisi will today discuss the legal issues surrounding drug imports, smuggling, and distribution that all contribute to the rise of this opioid epidemic. I hope you'll join me in welcoming Joe Rannazzisi.
Okay, I've got 170 slides in 30 minutes, so we're going to be flying. Don't blink. Don't blink. I love following my good friend Tommy Farmer. Tommy and I have been doing this show for many, many years. And this is the first time we've done it opposite each other. And so he ran about 30 of my slides, so but that's all right. I'll work around it. I'm going to work around it, I promise. Hey, so this is where we're going to get going here. About three weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I was sitting at a symposium like this at another college, and one of the first speakers got up there and they were like, I just want to tell you that this opioid epidemic just snuck up on us. And I was like, what are you talking about? Snuck up on us? Look, this thing came in and just announced its presence and purpose. That's what happened. We've known about opioids for many, many years. That's what we're going to talk about today. But the three things we're talking about: importation, smuggling, and distribution. We don't have problems with importation. Importation is where it starts, but most of the time the importation is straight on the level. So I'm going to spend very little time on importation. We do have problems with distribution. We do have problems with smuggling. That's what we're going to get into. So let's start. Prescription drug abuse history. What was the first? Anybody know when the first recorded event of poppy cultivation was? 3000 BC. 3000 BC. I want you to remember that. Who knows what laudanum is? Okay. It's opium tincture. 1600. Thomas Sydenham. Before him, there was another, I can't even pronounce the name, 1500s, laudanum started. Sydenham basically made it better in 1600. When was morphine isolated from the poppy? 1803. 1803. Okay? Anybody who tells you we don't have any experience with these drugs, or my favorite, we didn't know that they were that bad, is crazy, because there was an epidemic. From the Civil War into about early 1900s, we had an epidemic. We had a lot of people coming home injured. And what were they on? They were on opium. They were on opium or morphine. Okay, right up until the Harrison Narcotics Act was passed. So we knew we have centuries of experience with the addictive properties of opioids. So when people say, we just didn't know they were that addictive, maybe they're not students of history. But we always are told we learn from our mistakes, right? Okay. This is just typical laudanum, turn of the century. This is from the Washington Times. Check this out. A further discovery, this is 1919, a further discovery, startling and alarming, was that among the better class of people, those outside the underworld, the habit of using narcotic drugs had its origin to a great degree in prescribing by physicians and the use of relief of pain. Okay? We knew this was happening. We knew this was happening. 60s, 70s, and 80s, we were a culture of pills. We were a pill culture. We liked pills. It never got to the epidemic where we are today, but there was always those family members that were just a little into the pills. Uncle Harry with his problem with the uppers or the depressants. You know, this drug right here, where is it? Mephribamate. You know what they used to call mephribamate? A housewife's helper. Only to be replaced by Valium, the housewife's helper. First Librium, then Valium. Okay. But then the 90s started. And what happened in the 90s? Well, first of all, we had OxyContin came out. A very pure form, modified release oxycodone product. Okay? Sustained release, high dose. Okay, I'm not going to tell you that OxyContin is a bad drug, because OxyContin, like every other drug, has a need in a specific patient population. But right about that time, we started seeing people talk about inadequate pain control. We're not controlling patients' pain. And they worked that into chronic pain. Somehow, the lines got blurred because they were also starting to talk about, oh, well, terminally ill patients, hospice care patients, well, they're not getting treated either. I can tell you, for the most part, I don't know of any doctors, and I was in pharmacy school in the late 70s and early 80s. I don't remember any doctor saying, we're not going to treat chronic, terminally ill patients, palliative care patients. We're not going to treat end-of-life care or oncology patients with opioids. They were very, very good about treating pain. The problem was they were talking about chronic pain, and they mixed all those patient classes together. That's what happened. So we started setting the tone for prescribing behavior, starting with this is a letter to the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine in 1980. Now this I agree with. This is totally right. Read this. We conclude that despite widespread use of narcotic drugs in hospitals, the development of addiction is rare in medical patients with no history of addiction. And what is that? That's exactly correct. Because when you go in the hospital, you go for some surgery. What do? You go in, you get your procedure done, they put you on opioids for a day or two, and you're released. And generally, there is no problem. In fact, this study, this letter, had about 39,000 hospitalized patients, 11,000 received at least one narcotic, and 4 patients became addicted. That's pretty good, but it has nothing to do with chronic pain. What they did was they took this letter and said, well, see, we told you. Opioids are safe. Out of 11,000 people, only 4 people got addicted. It's okay to use it for chronic pain. It's okay. The chance of addiction is minor. And that's what was happening. We started changing prescribers' behavior. Look at this, 5th vital sign. You know, these are objective, subjective. Okay? And this is where it went down. And what did we start seeing? An increase in the amount of prescribing, followed by an increase in overdoses, followed by an increase in addiction, followed by an increase in patients seeking treatment, and finally an increase in overdose death. That's what was happening. You know, Congress is always the last to know anything. So what did they do? Well, we better start an investigation to see why all these people are dying. And in fact, they started looking at manufacturers and all these people that were running around saying, hey, these drugs aren't as addictive as we once thought. And in fact, they launched an investigation and they started looking at things. This is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin Journal Sentinel. Recent investigative reporting from Milwaukee Journal Sentinel and ProPublica revealed extensive ties between companies that manufacture opioids and nonprofit organizations such as the American Pain Foundation and the Joint Commission. Wow. These are the people that are pushing all of this, and now we've got ties to the opioid manufacturers. And what happens? This is another one. Pain doctors who promoted the drugs say they erred in overstating the drug's benefit and glossing over the risks. Did I teach about pain management, specifically about opioid therapy, in a way that reflects misinformation? Well, against the standards of 2012, I guess I did. We didn't know then what we know now. We didn't know these drugs were highly addictive. All those centuries that we had where people were recording addiction, we had no clue. See, my problem is we're a very forgiving society. And what was unleashed on our families, our communities, our friends, was a nightmare. And just to say, I just didn't know, is not good enough. It's not good enough. And it's not just the doctors. The pharmacists were just as bad, myself included. Why? Because pharmacists could have stopped it as well. Okay? Who knows, who's ever read this book? Come on, somebody's got to be out there. You guys need to put down 50 Shades of Grey and start reading something that's really worthwhile. This is the International Narcotics Control Board Annual Narcotic Drugs Report for 2017. If you read it, you'll see U.S. consumes 99% of the world's hydrocodone, 72% of the world's oxycodone, 50% of the world's morphine, 49% of the world's hydromorphone that's dilaudid, 56% of the world's methadone, and 29% of the world's fentanyl. And we have 5% of the world's population. Now, why is that? Is it just that we're the only people that know how to treat pain? The answer is no, because we're driven by what people tell us to do. And that's exactly what happened here. What happened here was our doctors were trained during a period of time that don't worry about using opioids judiciously. We have to solve pain. And it was based on anecdotal information and no science. That's why we have these numbers. And God help us. It's just going to get worse. Because in the end, prescription drug abuse is driven by indiscriminate prescribing, criminal activity, and regulatory violations. So we need to figure out a way to change prescriber behavior. Tommy showed you this slide in a different format, so I'm not even going to go there. Who knows in 2013, what was the #1 drug prescribed in the United States? Anyone? Very good. Hydrocodone, you can't say Vicodin. Say hydrocodone and acetaminophen. And hydrocodone combination products, okay? It's the #1 drug prescribed in the United States. In 2016, what's the #1 drug, or 15, what was the #1 drug prescribed in the United States? Come on, say it. Wrong. It's my John McLaughlin moment. No, wrong. The #1 drug is levothyroxine. So what happened between 2013 and 2015? We changed prescriber behavior. How? We moved it from Schedule 3 to Schedule 2. What happens then? No more refills. You got to write the prescription. You got to see doc. And what happened? Prescriptions went way down. So did the quota. See, the total number of prescriptions started to decrease. But the overdose stats are still going up. Why? Well, look at this. In 2012, we had 15,000 deaths related to the pharmaceuticals. And that went up to 17,800 in 2016. Heroin went from 5,000 to 15,000. And synthetic opioids other than methadone, that's all the synthetic drugs that are clandestinely produced, went to 19,000 from 2,000. Okay? Why? Well, because people generally, between 60 and 80% of people, start with prescription drugs. So if we don't handle the prescription drug problem, you could put all the resources you want into synthetic drugs, heroin, fentanyl, and all the analogs. It's not going to do a bit of good because you still have prescriptions, and you still have prescriptions that are drawing a lot of people. Anyway, we talked about naloxone. This is my quick pharmacology lesson for the day. Receptor site. The drug has to hit the receptor site to create a pharmacologic response. In this case, it's an opioid. What happens? You take a lot of opioid, you take it with a synergistic agent like alprazolam or carisoprodol, and you have severe respiratory depression. You go into respiratory arrest, and you die. But here comes hero, naloxone. Dun, dun, dun. Naloxone knocks the opioid right off that receptor. Why? Because it has a high affinity for that receptor, a high affinity than the opioid. And you immediately come out. Hopefully. Okay, that's why naloxone is so great. Importation. Every opioid that's not a synthetic that's made in the United States starts with importation. The poppy creates actually 4, but we're going to talk about 3 opiates naturally: codeine, morphine, and thebaine. Those are the 3 natural opiates. Okay, when you have from those drugs, hydrocodone and oxycodone are made, hydromorphone, oxymorphone, and heroin are made, and oxycodone, oxymorphone, nalbuphine, and all the rest are made from those 3 drugs. A natural, semi-synthetic, and then you have the drugs that are just made in labs. Those are the completely synthetic drugs. Those are methadone, fentanyl, and a couple others. Okay? When we import concentrated poppy straw, or opium. It comes in, bulk manufacturers make it into a usable form like morphine, and it's sent downstream, and they manufacture dosage units, they send it to a relabeler, repackager, and then it goes out into your pharmacies. So distribution is the key here. See, this is the flow of pharmaceuticals from raw material all the way down to patients. If you notice, everybody in this chain has got a responsibility, a legal responsibility under federal law. Title 21, United States Code, and the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21. Everybody has got a responsibility. Now, if everybody does their responsibility, it works and people there's no diversion. And it should drive down the amount of people that overdose. The problem is people are not doing their job. In fact, this whole scheme has been destroyed because people decided they weren't going to follow the law. So let's look at one specific case. This is diversion over the internet. In a real quick thing, you used to be able to go online to hydrocodone without a prescription, you get 1 million hits. You finally find a website and they give you a survey, name, date of birth, height, weight, Visa card number, what's your problem? My problem is back pain. Have you ever been treated? Yes, with hydrocodone, alprazolam, and carisoprodol. It goes to a doctor. The doctor might call you, but he'll never see you. This doctor happened to be in Jersey, and he approves the prescription. It goes to a bulletin board where a pharmacy pulls it down and fills it, and it goes to the patient. In federal law, we call that conspiracy. Okay? Totally illegal. Why? Well, there's no established bona fide doctor-patient relationship. None of that. What ends up happening is this was finally shut down. But before, and everybody could have stopped it. For instance, the pharmacist didn't have to fill those prescriptions because a pharmacist has a requirement, what they call a corresponding responsibility. He has to do a red flags analysis of each prescription that comes through his door. They weren't doing that. The doctor could only prescribe for legitimate medical purpose in the usual course of professional practice. The case is United States versus Moore. It's a 1975 case. You should read it. It's in OIA. Actually, the actual oral argument is on OIA. You could look at it, and it's great. Justice Marshall does the vast majority of the questioning, and it's great because Justice Marshall represented the most liberal portion of the bench, and he was also not a big fan of drug laws. But Justice Marshall was the one who just crushed Moore's attorney. So you should listen to it, because what he said was very brilliant, and it was about what a doctor's responsibility is. The wholesalers and distributors could have stopped it as well, because if a pharmacy is ordering 5,000 tablets every month, and then one month he orders 40,000, and the next month he orders 100,000, well, that's a problem. In law enforcement, we call that a what? A clue, exactly. But not in wholesale and distributor land. We call that profit. And that's what we're here for, to make profit. Okay? They could have stopped those sales. You know why? Because they have to file suspicious orders. Any order of unusual size, unusual frequency, or outside the usual ordering pattern is suspicious. And they have to do due diligence. They can't just send drugs downstream, but they weren't doing it. And manufacturers are responsible. So, how bad was it? In 2006, the whole year, the average pharmacy in the United States put about 75,000 hydrocodone tablets in the marketplace. So each pharmacy ran about 75,000. 34 pharmacies in one case did 98 million tablets because no one was doing their job. Ryan Haight comes in and changes everything. Ryan Haight shuts down the internet. Great law, hats off to Congress. What did they do? They immediately started opening pain and wellness clinics. And what happened in the state of Florida? By 2009, 44% of all oxycodone 30 milligram tablets were distributed down to the state of Florida. Now, I was in a medical conference, and I was showing this slide, and the doctor raised his hand. Okay, what? He says, well, I could explain that. Really? What? How? Well, that's where all the old people are. They all go down to Florida to die. I said, I've been a pharmacist a long time. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know too many doctors that are going to give their frail old patients Oxy 30 tablets. I mean, that's like hitting a gnat with a crane ball. You just don't do that. And 44% of all oxycodone 30s going into Florida? Are you nuts? So what do? We started hitting those clinics. And by 2012, they only had 14% of the oxycodone 30. And it's a lot less now. Why? Because they were all bad. Now, I don't have time to talk about this, but industry was bummed. They were very upset. So what did they do? They got their friends in Congress to pass the Insured Patient Access Act, which stopped DEA from doing immediate suspensions. Okay? See, industry has a hold on the country and a hold on Congress that you've never seen before. That's exactly what happened. And that's why all the states are going to court. I applaud the states for doing that. Okay, so now we're into synthetic drugs. Like I said before, synthetic drugs are here to stay. Between 60 and 80% of the people who are on heroin and fentanyl now who are seeking treatment started on prescription medications. The latest study was 33% initiated opioid use with heroin in 2015, 66% with pharmaceutical opioids. Now, people in industry say, see, we told you. It's not heroin. It's not our drugs. It's the heroin. It's the fentanyl. That's what's hurting people. Well, that's just nonsense. Heroin and fentanyl are hurting people, but how did we get there? We got there because we started with prescription drugs. And it's real easy to get there. You start with hydrocodone, you get your nice euphoria, then you start building a tolerance. So you're not doing 1 or 2 drug doses, you're doing several a day. And then you move to oxycodone, maybe a high-dose oxycodone product. And pretty soon, you can't afford it anymore. You're on a $200 a day pill habit. So what do? You start banging $10 bags of heroin. And where's the heroin come from? Well, it comes from the poppy, which comes from Mexico. Oh, well, the poppy doesn't come from Mexico, but the heroin ultimately is coming up through Mexico or Colombia. Pot is cut, opium's dried, they get morphine, they extract it, and they diacetylate it. Diacetyl morphine is heroin. Okay, so we're never going to fix this problem if we don't address the prescription drug problem. Now, I just want to, got 7 minutes. We're going to fly now. If you don't think we're flying now. Clandestinely produced non-pharmaceutical synthetic opioids. Are they produced domestically or abroad? Got it. Hold on, I got 7 minutes here. You're 5 minutes. Here, I'm going to tell you. They keep saying all the synthetic drugs are coming from China. That's bunk. I know it's bunk. And I'll tell you, the Chinese don't have clean hands. The Chinese have been doing synthetic drugs for a long time. But all of it coming from China? No. In fact, remember, learn from history. I heard that story before, in 2006. The opioid analog, this is a timeline of all drugs. Let me tell you, fentanyl products, we started the manufacturing process dating back to 1979 when we took down a lab in California with 3-methylfentanyl. 3-methylfentanyl. Then they made MPP, which actually was tainted with MPTP, which caused irreversible Parkinson's. Then you had parafluorofentanyl appeared in California. Then the chemist was arrested for making 3-methylfentanyl. Okay, that was in Missouri. Chemists arrested in Kansas producing 3-methylfentanyl, where 126 deaths were attached. Then the fentanyl lab seized in Big Bear, and it continued on until 2006. What happened in 2006? We started seeing this huge spike in deaths. Look at that. About 1,000 deaths during a 2-year time period. And why were those deaths occurring? Because of fentanyl. And what did everybody say? Well, it's not coming from the U.S. It's a different type of fentanyl. Where must it be coming from? China! Wrong. It was coming from Toluca, Mexico. Toluca, Mexico. That's where they were manufacturing it. Now, why were all these people dying? Because they don't know how to cut fentanyl. It's very difficult to cut fentanyl. And Tommy did a great job of doing it, so I'm not going to tell you. But it's just really difficult to cut fentanyl. Then they started making analogs. So you got fentanyl, so I'm just going to change this and make acetylfentanyl. Why? Because acetylfentanyl is not controlled. In fact, all of these drugs that are now controlled were uncontrolled when they first came out. So if I stopped you when you had the alpha-methylthiofentanyl, couldn't arrest you. Could charge you with an analog, maybe, but not arrest you for the drug because it wasn't illegal under the Controlled Substances Act. These are all the encountered fentanyl-related products. These are all analogs, and they're all out there. So when you talk about fentanyl, it could be these. Could be these. Thank you. Okay, so why? Chemists are smart enough. They're making products that you could manipulate. You manipulate their structure so you get around the Controlled Substances Act. That's exactly why all these products are out in the marketplace today. Okay, just when you thought it was safe to go outside. See this? This is a precursor. This is a precursor for fentanyl. It was found in a Boston mini storage warehouse. A Boston, 50 kilograms MPP. You could make a lot of fentanyl with 50 kilograms MPP in a Boston mini storage warehouse. And you use the Siegfried method, and that's it. Everybody who knows what they're doing in chemistry knows the Siegfried method. It's not difficult to make. It's not as easy as meth, but it's not difficult to make. How many people have been on Erowid before? E-R-O-W-I-D. Okay. See? One person. People who are parents, you need to know what Erowid is. How about blue light? How many people have been on blue light before? One person. You want to know where your kids are getting their drug information from? It's right there, blue light. Real quick, we're going to talk about the smuggling of these drugs now. Look at this. We went from CBP seizures of illicit fentanyl for 2 pounds seized in 2013 to 1,476 pounds seized in 2017. Okay? Now, there's 2 ways to go. I'm going to show you the different smuggling methods in about 30 seconds, or you could send it through the mail, or the common carriers, the overnight express mail packages. 2 ways. The ones that are coming over the mails are generally small quantities that are very, very concentrated. If they're coming through the smuggling route, through the border, the land ports of entry, they're going to be a weaker product, but a larger quantity. So how do they come in? Well, here's a pickup truck with the axle and drive shaft where heroin was found concealed within the axle casing. This is a dump truck where they use the belly dump trailer to conceal drugs. Here's 30 pounds of heroin that was hidden in a Honda. These are tunnels going from the southwest, from Mexico into the United States. These are very, very detailed tunnels. They buy a house, they drill a hole, and they dig all the way down through underneath the fence to the other side. And they start moving drugs. Notice? Here's another one. This was in Phoenix. Drones. It goes up, 2 kilos of fentanyl, goes right across the border, drops it, and comes back. And of course, maritime. See, there's so many ways to do this. So smuggling is just a symptom of our prescription drug problem. If we don't handle the prescription drugs, we're going to have generations and generations of people on heroin. Finally, I'm going to end with this. I always love this. We can't arrest our way out of this epidemic. When we have a rash of bank robberies, do we say, hey, we're never going to arrest our way out of these bank robberies? No. No. You can. You just got to arrest the right people. The right people are the professionals that are doing this for huge profit, the companies that are doing this for profit, the street dealers that are doing this for profit, the cartels that are doing this for profit. You go after them and you'll make a difference. We're not in the business of arresting users, and we never have been. But we got to take care of supply side economics. Take care of the supply side. Thank you. Here's my contact information.